Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth their time and bandwidth. Today's game is the video game adaptation of Saw. Yes, the publishers of Silent Hill collaborated with Lionsgate to make a Saw horror game back in the day. Is this a perfect match, or is it a trap? Let's find out. Saw the video game was an attempt by Konami to begin an entire new horror franchise since they basically murdered Silent Hill, and is based on the, at the time, extremely popular Saw movies. And with the new Saw movie coming out this year, I figured why not? Let's give it a shot. It's worth mentioning this game's actually pretty difficult to play these days. The PC port was bad and delisted, and it's even hard to pirate. So if you want to do it legally, you gotta be like me and have an old school console like a PS3 and a physical copy. You play as Detective Tapp, Danny Glover's character from Saw 1, who after the first movie is captured by Jigsaw and punished for his perceived sin of wanting to find Jigsaw. Yes, Jigsaw's complete backwards ass logic about teaching people lessons is still here, but it's neat that this game did try to tie itself into the ever convoluted plot of the franchise movies. The game plays like a fairly standard third-person survival horror game, just with a larger emphasis on its traps and puzzles. You'll be traversing a mostly linear set of environments filled to the brim with traps. From shotgun doors you'll need to QTE to survive, traps on the ground you can disarm, broken glass you need to make sure you don't step on, and a handful of light traversal puzzles. Fairly often the game will lock you in a room with a countdown timer and you'll need to solve some kind of puzzle to survive. These range from simply finding the right object in the room to more complex ones often involving perspectives to see numbers, codes, or hints. They're never particularly obscure or difficult, unlike Silent Hill, but the timer makes them stressful enough to be engaging. The game's limited combat is in third person and is easily the weakest part of the game. You have a strong and a weak attack and can use various weapons to beat down foes, though these weapons break after a few hits. You can forgo the combat, however, by rearming traps and luring the brain-dead enemies into them, which is a lot more fun. There's also big chapter-ending puzzles where you have to save an important plot person from a more devious and brutal trap. Though I'll admit I usually killed them first, because if I'm playing a Saw game, I'm gonna see people get killed by traps. That's why I'm here. And honestly, that's the gist of the Saw video game. A long-lost relic back when they still made movie tie-ins that attempts to blend classic survival horror with some more modern design and puzzles, with a lot of gore. So what I like about the Saw game? Well, it does an excellent job of emulating what fans enjoyed about the movies, from its brutal visceralness to the large number of traps and Jigsaw's constant taunting. Additionally, I actually enjoyed this game's puzzles quite a bit, even if they do repeat the same ones fairly often. A lot of them are just light brain teasers that are fun to work through. I particularly enjoyed the recurring lockpicking puzzle. And lastly, while the environments themselves are repetitive, they have a lot of great little horror set pieces that you run into, mostly victims in the aftermath of traps or them being killed in front of you, that really amps up the tension and spook factor in ways that felt true to the series. When it comes to the bad, as mentioned, the combat in this game is miserable, with the controls being very clunky, hitboxes a suggestion, and it being much too easy for you or the enemy to just get stun locked. Additionally, this game has a ridiculous number of instant kill traps, with them often being difficult to even spot thanks to the aforementioned overly dark atmosphere, and the checkpoints are not liberal enough to mitigate their frustration. And lastly, this game's gameplay never evolves, and neither do its environments, which means what you see at the beginning is basically what you are going to get throughout the entire game. The whole thing is kind of a flat line, meaning it gets pretty repetitive pretty fast. As you know, I rate games here on a 3-point scale. Must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And Saw the video game isn't a horrible horror experience, though unfortunately its few glimmers of real cleverness are overshadowed by a bunch of clunky jank. The big puzzle segments are exciting and setting traps is genuinely fun, but it's marred with its bad combat, boring environments, and brain-dead enemies. If you enjoyed the movies, it's certainly above average for a game tie-in, but considering how hard it is to play these days, you probably don't need to go out of your way like I did to get it. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Did you play the Saw game back when it was released? Do you enjoy the Saw movies? They were a guilty pleasure of mine back in the 2000s, although looking back, I think I only really liked the first 3. But let me know what you think about this series in the comments, and regardless, if you have the means, maybe check out Saw the video game.